Hi guys, welcome back to Coffee with Chloe and welcome to the third installment in my series of books I read each month of 2025, what I rated them and why. So far we've covered January and February, and today we're actually going to cover 2 months because, as I said at the end of my last video, when I finished Normal People by Sally Rooney, I then plunged into a month-long reading slump, and I only read 2 books in the month of March, which wouldn't make for a great video. So we're going to do March and April. All of that to say, I guess let's jump straight into it. So, like always, I have my list in my notes right here. Starting strong in March, the first thing I read after Normal People as I was hoping for like a palate cleanser, because Normal People is very like, there's lots of thoughts going on and it made me kind of sad, but also it made me feel a lot of things. So I was like, I just kind of want a simple romance book, so let's read People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I rated it a 3.5 stars. There's a few things that were not my favorite about this book, but it was a cute little romance. First and foremost, I had a really hard time connecting with Poppy as an FMC through most of the book. There were moments where I really was like, "Ooh, I get this girl." But there were also a lot of moments where I was like, "Can we please act like our age?" And I don't mean that in like, I love that she's very vibrant, she's very loud. I'm talking about the miscommunication. I feel like this book did not need to be a whole book. Like I touched on it a bit in my last video, that obviously the miscommunication trope is unavoidable in romance novels. It's gonna be there because it's what real people go through. But sometimes I think it's done better than others, and this was an instance where it was just like, I was really struggling with it because it just kind of felt like they were miscommunicating on purpose and they were both being children, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm being too hard on them, but I was getting very frustrated with both Poppy and, I can't remember his name, I feel so bad, maybe Alex. I was getting very frustrated with them. I didn't hate the book. It was still good. It was just irritating, so I did dock some points for those. I love Emily Henry books, but the way that this one did miscommunication, I know I've just said that word so many times it doesn't sound real anymore. The way that this book did it just did not resonate with me. 2, I then was like, okay, well, romance didn't work. Let's go straight back into devastating. And I read If Cats Disappeared from the World. I can't remember the name of the author, but Barnes & Noble had a thing going on where it was like, oh, buy a coffee and get the book for $5. And I was like, it looks cute. And my mom was reading it for book club at the time. So I snagged it up. It was adorable. 5 stars. I cried the whole way through. I cried from beginning to end. There was so much to think about. First of all, I think the way that the devil was written in this book was really entertaining. It added a bit of humor into a kind of dark and sad theme. We explored like running out of time, what would you do differently, regrets, etc. And then acceptance kind of death and of illness. It was really good. I usually have a hard time connecting with novellas, but I ate that book up. I read it in one sitting and it made me feel a lot of emotions. April, I was talking to my friend about being in a reading slump. I was like, oh my gosh, I really just don't know what to read. I don't know what to do because I tried romance. It fell short for me. I tried this. It was really good, but I'm still not out of my slump. And she was like, we need to get you a different kind of romance. Let's like find some other authors. So she had purchased a book that she then decided she wasn't going to read because she didn't like that they were in college. And it was Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. I rated this 4 stars. I read Ali Hazelwood before, and in comparison to other Ali Hazelwood books, it's not like the best in literary terms, but I really enjoyed it. It was a fun read, and it literally catapulted me out of my reading slump. I loved Scarlett. I found her to be very relatable, specifically with like the self-doubt and imposter syndrome aspect. I excused their lack of communication because they're both college students, they're young, they're getting out of these relationships that were not great. So I was like, that's pretty realistic, and it didn't bother me as much as like it did in People We Meet on Vacation. I will say Penn was forgiven way too quickly, and that was part of what I docked points for, because if I had a friend behave the way that Penn did, we would not be friends, and that was a little bit frustrating because I feel like Scarlett struggled with self-worth through the whole book, and then here she is forgiving this girl that was being crazy. Anyways, I digress. Next, I read Arrogant Devil. I think it's by R.S. Gray. I give this one a 3 stars. I really don't have a whole lot to say about it except it was painfully cheesy. I hate overdone cheesy stereotypes, and I felt like nothing was happening. I just don't think it was the right book for me. It was something that my friend really enjoyed, and it wasn't for me, and I don't want to get on here and be like, oh, it's so bad, this, that, and the third, because I'm sure a lot of people enjoy it, but I had a really hard time with it. 3, we've got Happy Place by Emily Henry. I think I was just really vying for Emily Henry because I have enjoyed her other books, and I was like, why? I want one that I'm gonna like a lot more, since I didn't really like People We Meet on Vacation. I give Happy Place 4.5 stars. I docked half a point because I found it kind of crazy that Harriet would leave her healthcare profession to, I forgot what she went, did pottery, which, like, I'm all here for the creative girlies, but just I don't know, I found it very unrealistic, so it kind of stopped me from being immersed in the story. That's the only thing I docked points for. Everything else I really liked, honestly. Again, this is an example of Emily Henry's writing where the miscommunication makes sense, in my opinion, because both of these characters are going through so much, especially when, quite frankly, I would be a disaster and I would not be able to communicate either if I was in his position. And that's not to excuse it, like, we're all adults, we need to act like it, but it made sense. They felt very, very raw, very vulnerable, and I definitely shed many a tears. I also loved the focus on friendship. Friendship is a really good focus in all of Emily Henry's books, but I just loved the friend group in this, even though they were a little bit wacko. 4, another novella. This was Graveyard Shift by ML Rio. I am not usually like a thriller horror person, and not that I'm not usually that type of person, but I just haven't really read that many. I haven't reached for that genre, and I picked this. I don't remember when I got this book. It must have been on like the buy one get one half off table at Barnes & Noble, and I was like, well, yeah, let's give it a try. I ended up rating it 4.5 stars. The only thing I docked points for was kind of counterintuitive, I want to say. I do wish it was longer. It left me on a crazy cliffhanger, and there's so many questions I still have. I wish it was a little bit longer, but that's the whole purpose of it. I understand like that the length of it, the cliffhanger, you're supposed to be uneasy and want to know more. I really enjoyed the characters. I thought they had amazing chemistry, both platonically and romantically. And I thought they were all very interesting. They had very interesting backstories. It took me a minute to keep everybody straight and be like, okay, this is this and this, because I think there's like 4 or 5 of them. But I really, really enjoyed it. Number 5, I read This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune, and I give it 4 stars. I really don't have a whole lot to say about this. The vibes are immaculate. I love a good summer romance. It was not particularly memorable, which is really what I docked points for. And I don't know if that's fair, but it's my rating, so. 6, okay. The next 6 books we're going to talk about, there's a lot to unpack. I'd seen, you know, all the people posting about the Chestnut Springs series and Elsie Silver, and I was really curious. I was like, okay, sometimes when I see that much hype around a book, I want to explore it just to see what I think. So I decided to take the approach to Elsie Silver that I had taken to Ashley Poston, and that's like starting with the books I'd heard the least about or her oldest books and moving onwards. So I started with Off to the Races, which I rated 2 stars. I can't believe I finished this book, honestly. I really am surprised that I didn't DNF it. I found it to be extremely annoying, cheesy, and boring. I didn't like the dialogue, I didn't like the characters, and I just felt like the writing wasn't very good. But this was, I believe, her debut novel, so I was giving her grace. I was like, okay, yeah, like, debuts, it happens. I started the Chestnut Spring series. As a whole, the series earns a 3.5 from me. I rated 2 of the books a 3 stars, 1 a 4, and 2 5s. Starting with Flawless, I gave Flawless a 4 star. It felt like it was pretty much just there to set us up for the rest of the books. Like, we meet all these other characters. They had a cute story. It was fine. I enjoyed it. But we met all the side characters, and I was picking up on them, and I was very excited. I wanted to know more about Winter. I wanted to know more about the older brother in the military and about Kate. I was like, ooh, I'm picking up, and Willa. I was in love with Willa. So I was just picking up on them all. I was like, okay, this is cute. I'm excited for this series. Number 2 was Heartless. I gave Heartless 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. I liked Kate Eaton. I liked Willa. I liked their dynamic. I thought it was super cute. And I remember a lot about that book. I've actually gone back and reread portions of it. I want to say the 3rd book was Powerless, and this was one of the ones that I gave 3 stars. I just did not care for it, which really surprised me because I've been like I don't know. I was like, oh my gosh, cowboys and hockey, like that's gonna be so fun. I really did not enjoy it. Something about their dynamic I just really struggled with, and I'm not sure what it was. It wasn't that it was bad, it just was not, it didn't hit like the other books did for me. Number 4, Reckless got 5 stars. I loved Winter's book, and I loved Theo Silva, and I thought they had such a cute story. I did cry a little bit during that book. I had been really looking forward to it. The book in this series that I looked the most forward to was actually the most disappointing. It was the 5th one. I just feel like we lost all momentum with Hopeless. I felt like it was disorganized. It was not as well written, and I didn't really feel the chemistry between the characters that I wanted to, which really surprised me. I was so hyped for Hopeless after reading through all the rest, and you get to know the characters in the background. I was like, oh my god, I'm so excited, I can't wait to see. And it just fell short. 8, we have our 3rd novella of this video. I can't believe how many I read at this state in the year. This is going to be Big Fan by, I think it's Alexandra Romanoff. I give this 5 stars. I stated earlier that I have an issue with novellas sometimes because they're so short it's hard to get into it. I really doubted my ability to enjoy Big Fan because it's a romance novella, and I've never read a romance novella, and I was like, how am I going to fall in love with and be immersed in this romance in like less than 200 pages? And yet she proved me wrong. First of all, it was giving like every fangirl's dream. It was very cute. It was also pretty funny, and I loved the commentary on women in politics and how they are treated differently and scrutinized for every little thing, even when it has nothing to do with them. I think that was the part of the book I enjoyed the most, and it made it more immersive for me, so I give this 5 stars. 9. Now, this book is not like the others. If you watch my TikTok or if you've been on my Substack, you know that I have some strong opinions about dark romance in general. I did write a research paper on it this year, and part of that included reading books to try and understand and like pick out specific examples. And this one I do see as better than some other dark romance that I read this year that we'll talk about later on in this series. It was Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. I gave it 3 stars. Like I said, if you've checked out my Substack or looked at my TikTok, you'll know that I wrote a research paper in September about the effects and the harmful effects of dark romance and the ways that we can make it we can use it productively to start conversations in society, such as classifying it under different genres, etc. I did appreciate Nevessa Allen's attempts at talking about things like consent and men, predators, etc. But to me, bringing up those conversations and then in a dark romance book kind of feels counterintuitive and counterproductive, because we're talking about consent, but then he's stalking her through her through breaking into her home and stuff. That is our March and April wrap up. There was a lot going on these couple of months. I feel like I jumped kind of all over the place with genres, but we did read a lot of romance, and I'm really excited to start getting into the summer books. I remember really enjoying the books that I read this summer. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And as always, if you want to check me out on other social medias, I post a lot on TikTok about writing, bookish content, lifestyle content, etc. My user is Coffee with Chloe. My Substack is coffeewithchloe.com or .substack.com. And yeah, see y'all tomorrow.